Mỹ Sơn Sanctuary is one of the best ancient temple complexes in Southeast Asia. Located in Quảng Nam Province, Vietnam, it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that served as a religious and political center of the Champa Kingdom between the 4th and 13th centuries. One interesting fact about Mỹ Sơn Sanctuary is that 400,000 people visit it every year, but only 15% are Vietnamese. The rest are foreigners who come from Hội An and Da Nang, seeking an additional adventure after exploring these wonderful cities. Some even say that Mỹ Sơn belongs to Hội An or Da Nang. No, it doesn't. However, thanks to its location just 45 minutes from Hội An and 70 kilometers from Da Nang, it's highly accessible. We're actually riding our scooter there today from Da Nang. But before we go, let's check out some comments from people who have already visited to get an idea of what to expect. Starting with some positive ones about the place. Like a stunning place rich in history, it felt like stepping back in time and learning a piece of Vietnamese history. Amazing place to visit, nice gardens and everything. Highly recommended this tour, while others share useful tips on how to make the most of your visit to the place. However, the core of Mỹ Sơn Sanctuary lies in its showcase of the ancient Cham people's culture, history, and architecture. Some found it hard to understand the history and meanings behind the ruins. They said they wish the audio guide or tour guides provided better information. But that's not always the case. Some people mentioned they really enjoyed the services and their local guides. What's going on here? Because some people even compared Mỹ Sơn to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. I think the real challenge with Mỹ Sơn Sanctuary is that the complexity of the information needed to truly appreciate it. Or maybe this guy has a point when he says it's not the tour for everybody. But what if after watching this video, you're equipped with enough info to make your trip even better? And if you don't get a chance to visit, don't worry, we've got you covered with everything you need to know about this incredible site. Well, lucky for us, before heading to Mỹ Sơn Sanctuary, aka the largest and most famous ruin complex of the Champa Kingdom in Vietnam, we've had the chance to explore many other sites along the south central coast and learn a lot about them. So in this video, we're not just going to cover the basics, but give you a simple, easy to understand picture of the Champa Kingdom and how their legacy has been preserved to this day.
And in order to get in the main campus or the main domain of this whole sanctuary, we have to purchase some tickets.
Thank you. We just entered. Considering that we've been pretty sedentary working home from the office, then going on a little hike won't hurt.
But I think it's gonna be really far. We have to use an electric car to get to the main spot. So here they have Mỹ Sơn Museum, and it looks pretty decent on the outside. Let's go to the permanent exhibition first.
A piece of inscription, 11th century. So each one of these rocks, well not rocks, but pieces have labels telling you exactly where it's from. So it seems like most of these date back to the 11th century, and the rest of these don't have any labels in English. So this is a map of all of the Champa Kingdom ruins, and below here you can see some of the ones that we actually visited before.
This museum is right at the entrance to help everybody learn about the Champa Kingdom. But only by looking at the items, artifacts, and pictures, it's still not easy to connect and understand everything. The most impressive thing displayed here is all of the inscriptions, both in print and real. These are what archaeologists and experts base on, not their subjective interpretations, to determine important information for their discoveries and needed restorations.
There's a really piece of interesting information right here. So it said that the earliest inscription in Sanskrit found in Southeast Asia, in which Sri Mara, the king of Champa, built devoting for gods of Hindu. I have no idea what some of the inscriptions are saying, and there's nothing indicating as to what is written on some of the stones.
The origins of the Cham people are still not proven, but they are now one of the 54 ethnic groups in modern Vietnam, and their ancestors were who created these architectural masterpieces. Experts try to look at many aspects and fit the theory of the Cham people's origins into a larger picture of Southeast Asia or even the world. Only two stood out for their appropriate explanations, Peter Bellwood and Heinrich Heine Geldern. They both had pretty solid evidence. One said the Cham people were from Taiwan, while the other said they were from India or an Indianized civilization. The thing that confuses everybody is their language. They spoke Cham, which belongs to one of the largest and most widely dispersed language families in the world, the Austronesian. But some of the inscriptions were carved using Sanskrit, one of the oldest languages which originated and developed in India. However, if you say they're from India based on the inscriptions and religion, most people and scholars out there won't agree. Plus, 2,000 to 3,000 years ago makes more sense, as it explains the formation of the Shaolin culture, which is associated with the ancestors of the Cham people. If you don't know much about the Shaolin culture, you can visit its museum in Hội An or watch our episodes 42 and 44. But then, how did they learn Sanskrit and integrate it into the society? The answer is through trade and interaction with Indian cultural elements. Trade networks spread Indian influence across Southeast Asia, and Cham rulers adopted Indian models of governance and religion. Mỹ Sơn is just one of hundreds of temples that deeply reflect the profound historical and cultural connections between Champa and Indian civilization. As part of the cultural diplomacy and respect for the cultural heritage, the government of India sponsored the preservation of Mỹ Sơn Sanctuary, even though the Cham people themselves were not ethnically or linguistically related to Indians. Nowadays, the Cham population is estimated to be around 500,000 people, with 1/3 living in Vietnam and almost the rest residing in Cambodia. Some of them still speak Cham, though the Eastern dialect in Vietnam has diverged from the Western dialect in Cambodia over time. They still maintain their traditions, especially during Kat or Cham New Year festival. This biggest traditional festival is held annually to honor their ancestors, deities, and their cultural heritage through rituals, music, dance, and community gatherings.
Compared to the other temples that we have visited around Vietnam, I feel like this one provides a lot more information. So this is a little model of the entire layout of this complex. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like I said before, I thought maybe we could go hiking around it or walking around it, but looking at this, I think you might be right. We have to take a electric car. This one?
Yeah, number 4.
So apparently this place where the kingdom is located in a basin. It's surrounded by mountains. Many people are in awe of how this ancient temple complex is completely tucked away, hidden in the heart of a lush jungle. The area is well shaded, with the main complex nearly 2 kilometers from the information desk. So be sure to bring water and consider visiting early to avoid the midday heat, as the tour involves a lot of walking.
It's a really good path to walk.
They actually have this really well maintained too, and it makes it really nice compared to some of the other places throughout Vietnam where it's not as well maintained or as easily accessible.
Right.
Today, we're exploring solo without a guide for a more flexible experience. But yeah, it's hard to believe that people have lived here since the 2nd century. Mỹ Sơn itself was constructed in the late 4th century and served as the royal spiritual center of the Champa Kingdom for over 1,000 years before becoming part of Vietnam. But how do they know it was constructed in the late 4th century and by whom? The answer lies in this earliest inscription found in front of Temple A1 in the ruins. King Bhadra Varman, who ruled from 380 to 413, was the first one to establish this sacred landmark and referred to it as Mahapravata in Sanskrit, or Great Mountain, aka Mỹ Sơn, not my son. And to explain why the king chose this foresty location, other inscriptions also mention Thu Bon River, which flows through Hội An Old Town, as Mahanadi or Great River, enhancing the sacred nature of Mỹ Sơn. On the bank of this river, they also found an inscription carved in rock deemed to designate the area of the spiritual realm. In Brahmanism, the precursor or foundation of Hinduism, worshipping the gods of the mountain and river reflects the philosophical dualism, like yin and yang in Buddhism. You skipped the stairs, man. Lucky you. I don't know if you're like me, but I'm really curious if Mỹ Sơn was their spiritual land, then where was their kingdom or capital?
This is a great question because although Mỹ Sơn stood as a spiritual center for over 1,000 years, the history of Champa changed drastically during this time. One fascinating aspect is that the area near Mỹ Sơn was chosen by different kings as the site for two separate capitals, Simhapura near Dagil and Indrapura. This strategic location was protected by the Annamite Mountains and offered access to maritime trade through Hội An's port via the Thu Bon River. Founded by Sri Mara in 192, following the decline of Eastern Han control, the kingdom was referred to as Linyi in Chinese chronicles. The capital was believed to be located in Dagil, known as Simhapura or Lion City. The kingdom's territory initially spanned from modern Quảng to Quảng Nam provinces, marking the beginning of its cultural and religious identity. Between the 3rd and the 6th centuries, Champa expanded its territory by consolidating control over neighboring communities and integrating smaller southern regions into its kingdom. In the late 4th century, King Badravarman initiated the construction of Mỹ Sơn, a significant spiritual center originally built of wood. In the 5th or early 6th century, these early wooden structures were destroyed by fire. But then they were rebuilt using brick in the mid-6th century. After 757, internal conflicts weakened Champa, leading to the rise of southern authorities and the relocation of the capital to Panduranga in modern Phan Rang. During this time, the kingdom became prosperous and deeply embraced Brahmanism and Buddhism, reflected in its cultural and architectural achievements. However, Champa faced frequent raids including attacks by Javanese forces in 774 and 787, which targeted its wealth and temples. In 875, King Indravarman restored northern dominance and established the capital at Indrapura in modern Quảng Nam. The architecture of this period, including the Dong Dương Buddhist monastery, reflected the kingdom's shift towards Buddhism. This bronze bodhisattva statue, now displayed at the Da Nang Museum of Cham sculpture, was unearthed from this monastery. During this time, Champa was a strong kingdom divided into 5 territories: Indrapura, Amaravati, Vijaya, Kauthana, and Panduranga. However, with the growing power of the Khmer Empire in the west and Đại Covid in the north, Champa faced significant challenges including military setbacks in 945 and 979, which contributed to its gradual decline. In 982, the assault led by Lê Hoàn of Đại Covid destroyed Indrapura, resulting in the death of King Paramasvaravarman I and forcing the relocation of the Champa capital to Vijaya in modern Binding province. For detailed explorations of Vijaya's history and its eventual fall to David, see episode 39. Despite the changes in history and the relocation of the capitals, the Champa kings continued to use Mỹ Sơn as a significant center of worship and religious activity. This conclusion is supported by archaeological evidence, epigraphic inscriptions, and historical records, all of which indicate ongoing activity at the site.
The performance is done, but they're still like standing on the stage to take photos with visitors. This one is called a sacred place for rituals and worship. So good thing that we tried to run like up here as fast as we could in order to see the tail end of this whole performance.
And if you think about it, with this place starting to be built back in the 4th century, all the way until the 13th century, that's got to be pretty hard to preserve. The temples are grouped into clusters, thanks to the work of French archaeologist Henri Parmentier, who categorized them by their historical periods, purposes, and architectural styles. All of these temples were built as places of worship for Hindu deities, especially Shiva, often represented by Linga Yoni statues. Here's what we learned about the statue before. A Linga Yoni statue, an ancient symbol in Hinduism representing the divine masculine and feminine energies. The linga is often depicted in a cylindrical or elliptical stone, symbolizing the divine masculine energy. And the yoni is the base, or the receptacle that supports the linga, indicating the divine feminine energy and the cosmic womb from which all life emerges. What's new to us is the linga yoni also carries broader symbolism. First, the linga itself represents Shiva's power to destroy and regenerate, completing the cosmic cycle. Second, the union of linga and yoni leads to creation, which is the realm of Brahma. Lastly, the balance and harmony symbolized by the linga yoni sustain the universe, aligning with Vishnu's role as the preserver. Now, the layout of each cluster reflects Hindu cosmology, with the main tower called Kailan, symbolizing Mount Meru, the center of the universe in Hindu mythology. Just like other temple complexes we visited, the main temples here housed sacred objects of worship, and their entrances face east, a direction linked to life and prosperity in Hindu tradition. Some of these sacred objects are still in their original spots, while others have been moved to shelters for better preservation. This room we're standing in is actually a mandapa, which was originally used as a meditation or ceremonial hall. It's said that before entering the main temple, devotees spent their time meditating in the mandapa to cleanse their souls. From there, they would pass through the gateway temple called the Gopura before reaching the Kailan. These three structures, the mandapa, Gopura, and Kailan, were carefully aligned to create a ritual path for pilgrims. The complex you're looking at consists of three clusters, B, C, and D. As a result, each structure has a pair. The Kailan always only has one entrance, and the one you're seeing right now is much cooler inside due to its thick walls, which range from 60 centimeters to 2 meters. Unfortunately, the second Kailan, also the only stone one that's deemed to be built at the latest, was destroyed in the war. If it still stood, it'd be the tallest and possibly the most beautiful structure at this location. There were also fire temples, often referred to as kitchens or fire halls, where offerings were stored and prepared before being brought to the main temples. These fire temples are quite similar to the ones we saw in Bingding province. The B-C-D group at Mỹ Sơn Sanctuary is the perfect place to get a general feel for the site's evolution. It has everything from the oldest to the more recent structures, showing how Cham architecture evolved over time. One of the temples here was even dedicated to storing sacred water used in rituals, taken from a nearby stream, showing just how intricate their beliefs and practices were.
On the walls of some of the buildings or temples over here, even though they got ruined, there are so many columns filled or imbued with a lot of decoratives and patterns and whatnot. They're so meticulously crafted.
I'm surprised that a lot of the carvings have stayed as long as they have, considering how old these temples are.
As you explore, you'll notice clear differences in carvings. The ones from the 9th century have a simpler, more geometric style, while those from the 10th century, when the Champa Kingdom was at its artistic and religious peak under the Indrapura and Vijaya dynasties, look more refined and intricate, reflecting their growing sophistication. So why didn't the kings just reuse the temples their predecessors built, especially since they serve similar purposes? There are a few reasons for this. First, building a new temple showed the king's dedication to connecting with the divine. It was their way of proving their commitment. Second, it was a bit of a status thing. They wanted to outdo the achievements of the previous kings and leave their own mark. And third, a new temple group symbolized a fresh start, often with new rituals or styles influenced by the times. Plus, let's not forget that the older temples were, well, old. Many of them had decayed over time, so building new ones just made practical sense.
Walking through this place, it feels so otherworldly, so ethereal, because where parts of the temple have completely gone to ruin, it is overgrown by so much brush and weeds and flowers that the butterflies have been so attracted to this area, and the weather, it's perfect.
Next generation, we should keep fun, no walk but sleep, because we know that that's how hard, how painful the world's life. And I would say in the past 9 people were killed and 11 people were injured during the landslide removal activity. And I would say maybe further there, a lot of monuments there, but we're afraid of the landslide, so we just stopped exploring this area.
After being abandoned for over 500 years, Mỹ Sơn was rediscovered in 1898 during a French expedition led by Louis Finot. Not long after, between 1903 and 1904, Henry Parmentier carried out detailed studies and documentation of the site. His work included drawings and descriptions of the architecture and inscriptions, which marked the start of the preservation efforts for the sanctuary. Unfortunately, those efforts were halted in the 1940s due to the outbreak of World War II. Later, during the Vietnam War, Mỹ Sơn suffered extensive damage from American bombing campaigns, especially in 1969.
If you come over here and you see the sign, what does it say? Bomb crater.
The site was targeted because it was suspected to be a base for the Viet Cong.
That temple there looks like it was completely buried.
Right.
Out of 68 recorded structures, approximately 50 were either destroyed or severely damaged. Group A was almost completely obliterated, while others like groups B, C, and D were partially damaged. In the early 1980s, a Polish restoration team led by Kazimierz Kwiatkowski resumed the work at Mỹ Sơn. Focusing on groups B, C, and D, they reinforced damaged temples, cleared debris, and preserved intricate carvings. To maintain the stability and authenticity of the restorations, they use a combination of traditional Champa building techniques and modern methods. In fact, they use cement to shore up the temples. Over time, this layer decayed, allowing grass to make its home there. However, the original bricks used by the ancient Cham people have stood the test of time. They still look almost perfect, but what remains a mystery is the extremely thin black layer between the bricks, used as mortar. It's so thin that you can't even see it, and its composition has eluded the Polish researchers. Studies have continued to this day, focusing on 3 key aspects. First, the bricks could have been baked before assembly, but the high temperature exposure seen in the mortar and the seamless bonding of the walls suggest a possible post-construction firing, meaning they baked the whole temple after it was put up, not before. Second, the exact method used to bond the bricks is still uncertain, though chemical analyses have found similar substances in both bricks and mortar. One hypothesis suggests that tree resin, native to central Vietnam, was used as an adhesive. Lastly, the carvings were done directly onto the finished brick walls by Cham craftsmen, as there are no broken lines that would be expected if they had been carved before assembly. And here's how an uncarved wall would look. If you've been to Hội An, you might have noticed a statue tucked away in the old town. That's Kazimierz Kwiatkowski, the man who played a key role in restoring Mỹ Sơn and putting Hội An onto the world map. His team's work in the 1980s laid the groundwork for future international collaborations, including contributions from Italian, Indian, and Vietnamese teams. Thanks to these combined efforts, Mỹ Sơn was officially recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1999.
I have seen so many documentaries about archaeologists. I like how it helped fill in the gaps, because when there's ruins like this one, you can't really envision what the end product looked like. But then using today's technology in order to reconstruct it, that's a really smart idea.
Right.
They used laser technology.
I have no idea how large this whole thing would be if it was still intact and not broken into pieces like this. And it's just way too big and way too important that people decided to kind of like roof it all up like this in order to protect the whole site. Otherwise, erosion and weathering will continue to happen, and maybe it's not going to be lasting for the next generations to know more about the heritage like this anymore.
As a Vietnamese, right? This is in Vietnam, and this is part of your culture and history. How do you feel about the preservation of things like this?
Honestly, this is not our own. It is actually originated from other cultures. So it's actually a blend of that rich culture and heritage of the world. And I just feel so proud and lucky to be born here in Vietnam in order to be able to call this, part of the nation. So a lot of visitors just come here and see the beauty that reflects on the general outlook of how humans actually existed on Earth. And it's not just about Vietnamese people and Vietnamese background. They have another music or ritual performance going on over there, and so let's head there to see what's going on.
According to legend, Apsara is the goddess of singing, dancing, and beauty. The sculptural images of Apsara dancers carved in rock are unique creations of the Cham artists, showing the unique Champa culture as well as the lifelong desire for beauty. To revive the soul of these sculptural works, we'd like to introduce the dance Apsara to you. It is performed by our dance troupe. Goodbye and see you again.
Right now it's raining, and also it's around 4 in the afternoon. The people who are working here seem to leave already, but on site there are still a lot of visitors still meandering around.
In episode 44, we're heading to Hội An, one of the rare cities where several ancient cultures intertwine, beautifully preserved through its architecture, cuisine, and local crafts. We'll explore must-see spots, chat with locals, and dive into unique experiences that define this historic town. If you enjoyed this episode on Mỹ Sơn Sanctuary, please consider supporting us to help create more quality content. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.